Welcome back to another episode of The Shape Up with Jacob. Today's special guest is a young entrepreneur who owns a photography and videography business and has turned his career into becoming a successful NFT artist. He's one of the sweetest souls I know, my friend Daniel Koeth. What up, dude?
What's up?
Welcome to the set.
Good to see you.
Have a seat.
I tried to look as homeless as I possibly could so that the transformation is even better.
Well, I would say that you succeeded.
Thank you
Just
so
kidding.
much.
Dude, welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Always appreciate a free haircut too. This is free, right?
Oh, it's my pleasure, bro. And we'll deal with that at the end. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. What are we doing to your hair?
So typical stuff. I think I'm gonna do like a taper on the sides from a 4 up.
Okay.
And then just like a little bit off the top, not too much. But I just need to be cleaned up a little bit, look a little less homeless
You
than
got
I
it,
normally
dude.
do.
You got it. I think we can do that.
You think so?
And then the taper down to a half like we usually do?
Yeah.
You got it.
Freaking perfect.
All right, dude. You create NFTs.
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Unfortunately. Why NFTs? That's a great question. I think I could probably talk for forever about why NFTs, but if I boil it down to why it's lucrative for someone like myself or any sort of visual artist, it's gotta be just the fact that it is the most it's so hard to quantify this. So any industry, art included, but like other industries like music, even television and film, there's so many instances where creatives are taken advantage of for their intellectual property. I think it's also a good example is this strike that is going on in Hollywood where actors are sort of getting their own likenesses taken advantage of. NFTs are a great solution to this problem where artists don't typically make money once things get, published, recirculated, passed around. NFTs are this immutable way to sort of share and, as an artist, make a living off your art and to be sure that it's getting, that you're being treated fairly, that your value is being, not taken advantage of, or just, value being stable. There's also the fact that because it's on the blockchain, there's this undeniable proof of authenticity that is a huge, tremendous problem in the traditional art market, but then also other industries as well. Like the example a lot of people use is that the most recent Leonardo da Vinci painting, Salvator Mundi, sold for a record-breaking amount of money, and after it was sold, they didn't even really know if it was a Leonardo da Vinci or not.
No way.
Right, and it's absolutely insane that something like that can happen, but it totally happens, and it happens all the time. Because NFTs are on the blockchain, there is this ledger of ownership. You can see, transaction amounts. It's all there, and it's not gonna ever disappear. So it creates this, like I said, like this layer of authenticity that has sort of been unheard of in traditional art and other fields as well. So as an artist, it's the most lucrative thing that I could imagine, and I don't think I would have ever gotten into it if it wasn't for all of those things. I know that's like a mouthful, totally a mouthful, but like...
Let me take it back for just 1 second.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is that if you're an artist, whether it's music, whether it's art, traditional painting, you create, right? And so from what I understand, NFTs is the creator's art that is tied solely back to you, and whether or not you sell it from A to B, when it's sold from B to C and D to C, you still get credit and money for that piece.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
And so the reason why you create NFTs is because you create art, and the reason you chose NFTs is to be able to capitalize on your art no matter what.
Right. It's this, because it's digital, it's inherently digital. The opportunity for visibility is exponential, right? So if you think about photography or the concept of selling photography prior to NFTs. So if I took a photo and I printed it out, went to, I don't even know where you would go.
Walgreens.
A Walgreens, or I don't know, an art show or something, you sell that photograph. My market, my potential market is anyone who is physically at this art show or wherever I'm at.
Sure.
NFTs immediately opens that up and increases the visibility to the entire world. Anyone with an internet connection, essentially, which, I mean, the comparison is absolutely insane. It's night and day difference. It's a difference between like absolutely no visibility to practically as much visibility as anyone could ever imagine. So it's just like, I don't know, it's not even it's so different, and it's hard to like even, I don't know.
No, I get it. You're not there in person, and you know, if somebody wants to buy your art and they're not there, they can't buy it. But right. You have a digital asset now that you can go, anybody, Dubai, Australia, somebody, whoever you likes your art can buy it, and you can sell it and make money from it.
Yeah.
Which the reach is exponential.
Yeah.
So my question is, to somebody like me, it seems like there was a bit of an overnight success, but obviously I know that's probably not the case for you. When it comes down to people who support you, is there like a fan base that you have in certain areas of the world that you wouldn't otherwise like have had reach in? Like, do you have a certain fan base in Australia, Dubai? Like, where do all those people come from right now?
It's a good question. So because it's so so it's funny, the NFTs and crypto in general is a decentralized concept, and I would say because of that, so many of the other things about it are decentralized, including any sort of fan base or audience. There is absolutely no hot spot for my work, except you might be able to argue the United States, but my collectors are all over the world, but then there's this huge thing in crypto and NFTs of anonymity, where you have no idea, you know, who people are, where they're from, how old they are. Like, there's just no way of ever knowing, which is sort of I don't know, that's something beautiful about that. So there's a lot of people who have no idea where in the world they are. But yeah, again, I guess that speaks more to the medium of NFTs than anything, where it truly is a decentralized concept.
You know, it's something that I've been intrigued by, and I actually have a couple NFTs myself, one of them being yours. I think it was the first big drop that you did.
Yeah.
What about your work, and mainly photography and NFTs, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
What about your work do you think is something that people are attracted to?
It's a good question. It's like, I can give you an answer, but I would imagine if you brought in someone else, they might give you a totally different answer. But I can give you my best, crack at it. The work that I typically put out, it would be considered surrealist composite photography, meaning I'm compiling. The final image will consist of anywhere from 3 to 6 different photos in one, which culminates into some sort of surreal scene or, I don't know, concept. For me, it's this. It's a way for me to get out the things that I'm imagining, like just pure imagination, that I think people resonate a lot with that, where they look at something and they're able to relate to it. Either they've thought of something similar, or I'll just give an example off the top of my head. One of my pieces there's a guy throwing an old CRT computer off of a building. That's a pretty, I mean, a lot of people have at one point in time, if you've worked with the electronics of any kind, you've wanted to throw it off of a building at some point, whether it's a printer or a computer or something. So like that's sort of, I think what it boils down to is it kind of, a lot of my work is playing to the imagination of, I guess, most people in modern times, I guess. So a lot of the themes are pretty current, I guess.
I want to be the first here to tell you that your work has sparked a level of childhood interest for me, like where like I feel like I'm attracted to it in a way that has, you know, like you said, a CRT computer, like it reminds me of my childhood.
Yeah.
But one thing I did notice that's been consistent throughout your work is that there's always a sky, or mostly a sky, in your most recent pieces that have been involved in what you've been selling. So I was gonna ask you, like, what's the inspiration behind the sky?
That's a great question. I think, so I guess to describe more, answering that initial question was like describing like the type of work or the appeal of my work. I'm also somewhat of a minimalist, so I'm always working with a smaller toolbox a lot of the times, and with that, I naturally got to the blue sky as this backdrop for, I would say, probably 90% of my work now has a blue sky. And that's another thing where I could probably talk forever about it. But to me, it's more of a universal backdrop, right? So when I'm making stuff, I'm always trying to think of ways that most people can relate to the work itself. And a blue sky is something that's kind of loaded with symbolism for a lot of different people. For me, growing up in the American Southwest, it's like 90% of the year has these like pristine blue skies that I think are actually pretty like iconic for here, and it's just something that I find great like peace and just joy looking at, or like, you know, when it's like a blue sky day here in Arizona, it's just like, I just love it. Even if it's like 110, I just love it.
Right.
But the concept of a blue sky is, for most people, is this positive thing, right? It's like nothing but blue skies is like this
breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it's a sign of positivity, no worries, Hakuna Matata sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'll use that as a concept, whether that's to contrast something else or to sort of bolster the meaning of another element in a piece. But it's ever present because for me in my life, whether I've had a good or bad memory, the blue sky is always the backdrop. So it's this way that, I don't know, maybe it's me making sense of my own personal experiences, but I find that a lot of people can relate to it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and I think that what I'm kind of realizing through this conversation is that you're an artist, right? And there's not always a needed explanation, but there's more of a feeling and emotion, a piece of you in that art, and that sky is essentially what your life has been so far. Like a meaningful moment or a bad moment, there's always been a blue sky. And that's kind of cool. I mean, I think that that's something that for people who are watching that don't really understand NFTs, that think they're just like a JPEG, you know, or whatever you say. I think that there's a level of artistry that comes with your work, and I respect it tremendously, which is why I want to have you on, because it's not just a computer-generated image. There's intention behind what you do, you know? And there's intention behind most NFTs, but I was gonna ask you, with that being said, what do you have to say to the people who don't understand, like, why somebody would buy an NFT versus it just being a JPEG picture on the screen? It's kind of a controversial topic, I know.
It's certainly controversial. That's something I think a lot of people are really, that's like a point of confusion for a lot of people. And I totally understand. because I once, at the beginning, I didn't understand it myself. But when you break it down, it's the way that the art market has always been from the beginning of time, right? It's this, you can argue the value of anything, because especially art, where it's like, why is this worth $300 million? It's just it's just the Mona Lisa. It's just this lady sitting there or something. Like it's one of those things where art sort of has a more cultural, the value is derived from, I guess, its cultural impact or its social impact in whatever arena that it's placed in, or whatever the backdrop of it being created. And people struggle with the concept of this when it comes to digital goods, because, again, going back to the Mona Lisa, you can Google the Mona Lisa and there's the Mona Lisa on your computer screen, but you obviously don't own the real Mona Lisa.
Right.
Because of the way, again, the way that NFTs were, created on the blockchain, this immutable ledger, it's now the first time in history where we've been able to trace digital ownership, which is so massive, because if you put all the craziness and conflict aside, everyone in the world has some, digital ownership is not a foreign concept by any means, but we haven't found a way, this is the first time where we found a way to make it, permanent and actually real, right? So if someone plays a video game and they buy a skin or something custom inside that game, that's digital ownership, but the difference there is now, if it's not an NFT, it can be taken away. And I saw something recently about, relative to the video game Call of Duty, where they're shifting their platform, they're making a new version of Warzone or something, I think it's Warzone, and they're not allowing the transfer of assets from the original Warzone to this new version, and people are super upset because they spent money to get those things.
Yeah.
NFTs are the solution to that problem, and I think a lot of people, it's hard for people to connect the dots there, but that's what it boils down to. It's a way that we can finally put ownership on all the various digital things that we possess in our day-to-day lives. It solves this problem where things can be taken away from you, whether that's you could maybe say you own your, there's another misconception that people think that they own their social media handles, and we saw that was not true at all in Twitter and the Elon Musk thing, where when he took it over, he took they just reprimanded a couple of people's accounts and just took their handles.
Yeah.
Because they don't own it. And people don't realize, people think that they own these things, but they don't actually own them. It's in the ownership of whatever entity is, producing the service. So
I'm one of those guys who played Fortnite for a long time, and I definitely have spent, I've spent thousands of dollars on those skins. Why? I have no idea.
Crazy.
I think that there's an understanding of feeling some type of way when you're in the game and you have a character or a skin. Yeah. But man, that was unneeded money because it's not there now. I have no idea how to log into that account. I don't even know what I own and what I don't, which essentially what you're saying is I never even owned it in the first place. I just paid to use it.
Right.
And I think what I'm gathering too from what you're saying is that there's a bit of a ownership draw, where you have a piece of digital, code, if you will, which is what an NFT is on the blockchain, but it's yours. And it's nobody else's. Nobody's going to take it away from you because you actually own it.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm hitting you with a lot of controversy today, but it's kind of a controversial topic, NFTs right now. So if it is just about pure sense of ownership, then why is it so hard in the media, right? Why is it such a negative condensation behind the word NFT? you know?
Yeah, I think NFTs blew up in the mainstream media because of what would be considered a PFP collection. So something that someone would buy and use it for their profile picture on various social media platforms. And most of these collections are collections of 10,000 items, and they have minor variances. So the big one that most people know is Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is the funny monkeys.
Yeah.
And it's a collection of 10,000 of these monkeys, and they all have these different traits, whether it's the hat that they're wearing, the eyes that they have, the facial expression that they're making. And it's objectively so silly. I mean, like, I'll be the first to admit that it's so silly. But it was one of those things where I think that concept really met the moment where NFTs took off, and that became the easiest thing to point a finger at because of how it is ridiculous and overpriced. And you know, you had a lot of celebrities getting into it, buying these things, and
some of those things were selling for upwards of $1.3 million at a certain point, right?
Yeah, I'm sure more than that. There are other collections that are more prominent and that are selling for way more at the time. And to someone who is not like privy to what's going on, it's the most ridiculous thing you could possibly think of. Because then it's like, it's just this JPEG and what makes that JPEG worth $5 million and this JPEG worth, you know, $24. Like, it's crazy. The value was hyper inflated, and I think it's kind of come back into the media because of, you know, the stark contrast now with the value of where they're at now versus where they were then.
How much can you buy Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT for right now?
Now probably $30,000 or something like that, between $30,000 and $40,000, I think, is where it's at.
Would one be like, oh, this is a great buying opportunity, or do you think that this is a dead opportunity for something as big as the Bored Ape Yacht Club?
Well, I certainly won't give financial advice on something like that. Do your own research there. If you're asking me personally, I've never saw value in them. It's a highly volatile investment. So, you know, definitely do your own research, look at it yourself. Where I'm more obviously in the one-of-one art side of things, which is can be seen as more stable or risky depending on who you're talking to. But I think just a blanket statement, anyone who is intrigued by the concept should do their due diligence, you know, check it out. You can get involved in the communities without having to buy anything, and so I would recommend to get your toes wet, just, you know, get onto Twitter or X or whatever and just start engaging in these different communities. And I've even heard of people doing, you know, paper trading for NFTs. If you're interested in the trading side of things, you can paper trade NFTs and kind of get used to it, but it's highly volatile, highly unpredictable, and I don't advise anyone to just jump in, that's for sure. So there's certainly a plethora of opportunities, but yeah, it's not even as simple as like betting on a sports game or it's definitely not the same as like the traditional stock market. It's way more volatile, and just it's so novel of a concept, right? That's what I found in the first, you know, 2 years I was in it. There are all these things that are happening for the first time. There's no historical references for a lot of these things.
I think that's what's cool about it, is that it's a whole new opportunity, but it's also like a new concept that no generation prior to us has ever tried to understand, you know?
Right.
And so the beauty of it is that it is new, and there's going to be trends that happen high and low and high and low. Do you see another big push in the NFT, like for people to kind of adopt it into their everyday life? Like, do you see that happening?
Yeah, I'm still very much optimistic about the upside with NFTs as a technology. Again, our lives as people on this planet are not getting any less digital, and the ownership of digital things is not slowing down by any means, and it's quite the opposite. So the upside, I believe, for NFTs is absolutely infinite. Again, that's certainly what excites me and draws me into it. But in the same breath, I understand why people are reluctant and wouldn't want to. But it's something that I think is a perfect solution for a lot of problems we currently have, and problems that are only going to be exacerbated by the evolution of digital technology integrating itself into the average human's life, especially with all these, everything's becoming AI, and we're gonna be wearing headsets, and it's not an exaggeration to say that our lives are being completely consumed by digital products and environments of different kinds. And I think NFTs, again, are a sort of a center point to the solution of a lot of the problems that we have. So huge upside. I wouldn't be dumb enough to try to tell you when I think that that's going to happen or whatever, but I just am certain that it's going to happen at some point.
It's interesting to think about the world of NFTs, and not for what it is today, but the future reference of it, right? How is it going to play into our world? How is it going to be this big conglomerate in Web3 even, right? We haven't heard that word in a while. It's kind of a thing that was huge and then all of a sudden died down just at the same time, right?
Yeah.
But looking into the future, I can definitely understand why you think that, right? But there are people out there who don't think that's going to be the case, which is quite interesting. And I'm trying to play both sides, but I'm more leaning towards the side of understanding what this does and the use case of NFTs and why they're valuable, especially knowing somebody like yourself, because there's not a lot of people who know an NFT artist, right? And I'm lucky enough to know you and have been able to pick your brain throughout this process and see your success. And you kind of dabbled in the idea of you being a one-of-one artist, right? Do you plan on continuing your journey being a one-of-one artist, almost like a Picasso, if you will, because you can't, paint two paintings of the same. Every painting that you paint is going to be different. Same thing with you. Everything that you sell is going to be different, especially if you're doing one-of-ones. In the future, I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, where do you see your career going?
Yeah. Well, I think that majority of what I'll be producing, at least in the short term, will definitely be the one-of-ones, sort of one-of-a-kind work. There's always a place for making additions, making an NFT that has, it's the same NFT, but there could be 10 tokens that have 10 different owners. That is certainly something I would reserve for a more bullish market, because if you don't do it right, you can really sort of deflate your value, and it can be a slippery slope. But I think for me, it's definitely focusing on one-of-one work. And I don't have much of a future forecast, I think, for myself, and I think maybe that's one of the things I've learned from my experience in such a volatile place. It's sort of foolish to think that I would know where I'm going, because it changes all the time. I didn't even get into NFTs as an artist in the first place, and I would have never imagined myself in the position I'm in now, even 2 years ago. So it's part of the, I guess, again, maybe part of the allure of the space is that there's a lot of unpredictability there that is, it can be exciting, it can also be terrifying and awful and
It's funny that you say that, because I was actually going to say, like, how cool is that to kind of have a career where you're just like, you never know what's going to happen next. But I guess I didn't think about the fact that that can be really scary too.
Most people don't like that word when you pair it with career and unpredictable career.
Yeah. So you've had the pleasure of going to how many NFT NYCs?
I've gone to 2.
And that is for anybody who doesn't know, NFT NYC is where it's a convention basically for people who collect NFTs, correct?
Yeah.
And what was the biggest difference? I know that, the first time you went, it was a completely different experience than the last time that you went. One of them being that people actually kind of knew who you were at one point, right?
Yeah.
Did you run into kind of what your life could look like with like a bit of a fame behind it, being a famous artist, or was it just kind of like you don't want people to know who you are? Because there are people who are anonymous in the NFT industry who create art, but you don't know who they are. You were one of those people who ended up choosing to let the public know who you are, right?
Sure.
And so going to NYC and getting recognized, how did that feel, and why did you choose for people to know who you are?
That's a good question. It's definitely cool. It's obviously not on the scale of, I don't know, someone like, Taylor Swift going to a football game sort of thing. That's a whole nother level. But like, it is sort of a surreal thing to have people recognize you and be excited to meet you. It's really cool, and I think that's important. If someone's it's energizing, I think, as a creative in any field where if you encounter someone who is admiring your work, that's exciting, and it sort of fuels the fire. So I definitely got that from, those interactions. And especially like I said, the market's not fantastic right now. And so those interactions, you kind of, hold on to those moments. You remember those moments in any times of uncertainty or doubt. You're just, they're really special. And I think the other part of the question, why I'm not anonymous, I think for some people that's maybe more of a, I feel like you can have, that's more of a luxury to be able to choose. As a photographer, having your identity out there, and someone like myself who I've been, taking photos and producing, videos or content for years prior to getting into NFTs, using my name and my actual public, likeness is sort of like a token of credibility, right? So people know my name, you can look me up and you can see that, I've got X amount of followers, I've been making, these photos for X amount of years, like I am who I say I am, and there's some sort of a provenance when it comes to the work that I'm creating. Whereas anonymous, obviously don't have any firsthand experience being an anonymous artist, but you have everything, you've got an uphill battle, right? Because no one knows who you are, no one knows what you're making, no one knows, it's so much harder to convey a lot of different points. So for me, I think it was an immediate benefit to tell people who I was and show my track record as a photographer specifically, because in a way it sort of helps people assign some sort of intangible value to the work that you're creating.
Sure.
So yeah, I didn't feel like I had it felt mandatory, I guess, for me to say who I was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can respect that, dude. I want to do a segment now. This is the first segment we've ever done here on the show. It's called Ask ChatGPT.
I can't wait for this. This is going to be great.
And I did ask ChatGPT, what should I ask an NFT artist?
I'm about to get roasted by an AI bot, I bet. It's going to be a sarcastic question.
Let me go through these questions really quick.
What do your parents think of your stupid NFTs?
That would be a great question.
Thanks, ChatGPT.
But I don't think ChatGPT judges, you know?
We'll find out, I guess.
I'm just trying to pick one that doesn't go with what we've already talked about here. Oh, I like this one. Another controversy.
Oh boy.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
Go for it.
Can we get water just in case? No, I'm just kidding. With concerns about environmental impact, what are your thoughts on the sustainability of NFTs, and do you take any measures to mitigate this? ChatGPT, not me.
Me personally, no, I don't take any. There are truthfully no measures that I take that are conscious of environmental conservation. I know that might be not a great thing to say, but the origin, I think, of that question was one of the bigger concerns, at the inception of this new market, was that it's also a concern when it comes to crypto in general, because there's a tremendous amount of electricity and stress on the grid to mine Bitcoin or produce these, keep all this stuff up and running. It is my understanding, though, that compared to a lot of other things, it's not as much of a burden on the environment as I think the general public was led to believe. And that's understandable. Anytime there's a new technology, right, people try to find all the talking points and the quickest things to nitpick.
I can just see that person in the comments right now.
Being like, this guy doesn't know anything.
Yeah, you're about to get it.
Yeah, and I guess it's not, maybe I'm probably not the best person to ask about in terms of articulating specifics or citing any sources. I'm certainly don't have any of those to bring forward, but I mean, there's a lot of different ways that art has always sort of not been good for the environment. I mean, I think of even being a film photographer, all the chemicals that you need to use and all the materials that are involved in producing a singular film photograph is terrible. It's not great. It's so bad for the environment. It's not a good thing for the environment.
That's interesting, actually. I never thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you kind of go through, there's a lot of things that are not great for the environment, truthfully. And I understand the concern. I understand the point. And it's not something that I've spent much time looking into in terms of a solution, because I think if you're involved in any way like I am, you're sort of subject to the framework of the way that everything is set up, being associated with the blockchain in general. I think that's sort of where the environmental concern comes into play, and that's not something that I could fix myself. I think there are some. I mint my work on Ethereum, which is sort of the most popularized blockchain, and there are other current cryptocurrencies on different chains that supposedly have less of an impact. And as an artist, that's a tough place to be, because a lot of the times, though, whatever those coins are, they're just not popular enough, right? So I could go out on a limb and just say that I was only going to accept a certain form of cryptocurrency that was more environmentally, sustainable. But if no one is buying or selling anything on that blockchain, then I'm just, I've totally put myself into a corner there, and I don't have any. If the goal is to make a living as an artist in this space, that's a difficult one, because that's not something I would consider a viable solution.
It makes sense, actually, because you're basically what you're saying is if you were an artist in physical form and you're painting a picture, but you were thinking about the fact that the government chops down trees to make the money that you use to buy the art. Sure. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to be an artist because of the trees that are being lost. So I understand that, actually. It's kind of a interesting thought. And another thing that did pop in my head while you were talking was that the idea that basically what you're saying is that when all these big celebrities stop riding around in their big jets producing carbon is when you'll start thinking about your NFTs being more green.
Yeah, which
just kidding.
I mean, it's definitely it really comes down to what your personal, approach to it all is. But it's not something that I think I don't know. It's difficult, especially as an just like a small piece of the giant machine. It's really challenging to, that's if you're really compelled to make a difference or make a statement, it's like that's like your whole thing. Like that's your life's mission, and it's really hard to. I don't know. That's certainly an uphill battle.
That was a tough question. I just remind you, it wasn't me. It was ChatGPT.
Kudos to ChatGPT. That was certainly a hot seat question. Jeez.
Go easy on them, guys, please. No, I just want to say, dude, what you're doing is honestly one of the most unique things that I get to experience as a barber, right? As a client relationship that we have, and friend. I mean, honestly, you've been my friend for 8 years now?
Yeah, something like
that. But truthfully, it's unique, and you're succeeding at it. Like a lot of people say, I want to do this, right? But then they try it and then they kind of fall off. But you went from, and we've had these conversations, and I'll kind of just, short form is like, you and I talked about crypto, and then we talked about NFTs, and one day you kind of introduced me to an NFT artist that I was like, whoa, what he's doing is really cool, and I think that you felt the same way. To now becoming a creator that is succeeding at what he's doing. I think that is honestly one of the dopest things that I can say that I appreciate for what you're doing. It doesn't have anything to do with NFTs. You're succeeding. You had your mindset on something that you want to do, and you did it. And let's be honest, it's probably not the easiest thing to do to try and figure out the puzzle of making an NFT. Yeah. Making a picture is one thing, and taking a picture is one thing, but then putting it to paper when you have to attach a code and you have to do all this stuff, then you have to sell it. And then not only that, you have to be a reputable artist to sell on some of the platforms that you sell on, right? Which leads me to ask you, where can some of the people watching find your work?
I think the best place, the two places would be, x.com, which is, I think my handle for X and Instagram is the same, which is just my name, which is at DanielKoeth, which is my full name, no spaces. That's where you can get a good sense of my portfolio, and can kind of follow along with any sort of day-to-day commentary or new releases or any stuff like that. Also, I believe my DMs are open on both, and I'm always willing to help people navigate if they're compelled to get into the space. I am easily accessible for any questions or concerns or anything like that. So I encourage anyone to reach out if that's something that they want to look into.
One of the things I noticed on your Twitter is every morning you say good morning to everybody who follows you. And that's not a small amount of people.
Yeah.
And I respect that, because I think one of the things that I've noticed from an outside perspective of your success is the fact that you've been able to build a connection with the people who follow you. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, certainly.
What do you think that you're doing differently than some of these big projects that are selling 10,000 at a time that are kind of disconnected to their audience? I mean, do you think just that simple good morning on every day on Twitter is it, or do you do things that are different to build that loyalty between you and your collectors? I was saying fan base before, but I like what you said, collectors.
Sure. Yeah, I think inherently with those two, me and versus one of the big, 10,000 PFP collections, it's like I have obviously a tremendous advantage about there's no real I am my own brand, where I'm not selling this this separate thing that I'm a part of. It's like it is me as a person. So saying good morning every morning is a small example of stuff that I do, but I try to keep it super personable, right? Like it's, again, maybe that goes back to also not being anonymous, where I'm not, everything I do maybe is to show that I am a person, and the art that I make is an expression of me as a human on this planet, right? So anything over time, I think I have more of an intimate relationship with any collectors or people engaging with my stuff, because if someone says good morning back to me, for example, I'll say good morning back to them, and that, like, tell them I hope they have an awesome day, and like that's already like an interaction that probably doesn't happen in any of these other collections, right? So, but that's the whole, I think that's this intangible part of it. It's hard to like teach that component where, selling art in general is difficult because the whole goal is you can't sell art if you don't convince people of the value, and a lot of the times the value is so subjective. It truthfully could be, and I without question, I don't even have to ask anybody, I know that this is true, where there are probably people who just like me as a person and have bought my work as a result and have no real opinion or impression of the piece that they bought from me, but the gateway to that was liking me as a person. So, and I think that's you can relate that to a lot of other businesses and services, right? Where it's like cutting hair. Well,
you may not like my art and the haircut I give you, but you could like me, and that's important, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I would say you're definitely you're someone who is a great human to be around, but then you're also incredibly talented at what you do. So,
thanks, bro.
Which is like, I think that's great advice for anybody, where it's like you got to be a good person first. Like you can't be like if you were an asshole and you're good at cutting hair, it's probably a lot harder to get people to come back.
I think that with and I may have touched on this on a previous episode or not, but like when it comes down to cutting hair, the idea of being able to do a good haircut is important. But I mean, think about it. The 45 minutes that you and I have spent together when we first met 7 years ago was so crucial for us to be here in this moment right now. Yeah. Right? Like you chose that you like being around me, separate from the haircut that I gave you, right?
Right.
And I chose that I like being around you separate from you being a client that's paying me to give you a haircut. And us being together in this moment right now is a mutual respect for humans as a whole. And that's why I love what I do, is because I get a chance to just meet new people that I wouldn't otherwise have met if I didn't cut hair,
Right.
And just see the cool shit that people do, like yourself, and be motivated by your motivation,
Sure.
And I honestly, every time you sit in the chair, dude, I find a lot of motivation in your success, and it's been so cool to kind of hear, your story and see your story subside into what it is today. And I'm just grateful for you as a friend, as a client, as a human in my life, and I think that it'll be really cool to see you, speaking on stage someday, even at NFT NYC, if that's something that you choose to do,
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. That's
of
super
course,
nice
dude.
of you. I do think that there's something to that that's really, really important in there about, I think, because another thing that is, paramount to anyone's success in any industry is you got to be able to make like manageable failures, and if you are a likable person, it's easier to make those mistakes and learn from them and move forward unscathed, right? Like, so you could say you gave me a bad haircut for whatever reason. I'm not gonna not be your client anymore because you accidentally like cut the back of my neck or something like that.
Well, I gotta tell you. No, just kidding.
So like the goal, the more mistakes I think anyone makes at what they do, the better they get. So the goal should always be to make the most amount of mistakes as quickly as possible. And if you're a better person, it's easier to do that, or like a more likable person or a more approachable person, because you just have you have a more sympathetic clientele or audience, you know.
Yeah, people who are willing to see you fuck up.
Yeah, and I mean, I've certainly made a ton of mistakes in business and in the NFT space, and I can't say that things would be as resilient as they were if I was I don't know,
an asshole. So to all you assholes out there, have fun, suck it. No, I'm just kidding. No, what you said is actually so accurate. One of the things that I've lived by up to this point in my life is failing fast and failing forward. So no matter what we do, fail as soon as you can, because failing means success if you can get through the failure, right? And I've failed plenty, dude. I failed today. I had to do the intro 9 times, but that's just part of the journey, right? And like every podcast that we do, we get better and better and better. This is the newest thing I'm using the podcast as an example, because this is like this most recent thing that I've been having a challenge with, is trying to be a good podcaster, right? Trying to be able to also think about all the things I want to ask you while focusing on your haircut and not messing it up. And like all of that does matter. And so failing fast and failing forward, I always remind the team, I'm doing my best to get better. I'm taking notes, I'm doing, it does matter, because everything I've done in my past is really just only affected me for the most part. But now I have people taking their time and being a part of this team and part of this podcast, and that's super important to me, because I don't want to fail on them, but also we have to fail to get to the success. So as we come to a close here, Daniel, first off, I want to thank you, but second, anybody who has the idea that they might want to become an artist or an NFT artist, or just something other than what they're doing now, like what's your advice to them and that you've used to get through to the point where you're having success?
I would say don't do it. Be an engineer. Stay in school. I think it's a really interesting career path, and it's something that I myself didn't even see myself getting into. And I think if someone was at that juncture where they're considering going down it or not, I think one of the biggest things that you need to keep kind of at the forefront of your mind is that it's making art is an incredibly personable thing, and to never lose the sight of that it's something that you should be doing for yourself, and it's not something that you should be doing for the, I think NFTs are really, is a hotbed for this problem where people get lost in the commercial side of things or the financial side of things, where they see the dollar amounts and they get sort of hypnotized by that, and that'll totally produce the wrong outcome, and you're setting yourself up for failure. So if you want to be an artist, sort of make sure you're always doing it for yourself and keep that at the forefront of your mind. And in any point in time where you're dealing with adversity, that is also such it's been easier to make decisions when it comes to making new work or navigating the tumultuous landscape of the NFT space, with that at the forefront of my mind. It's like, is this something that feels right for me? Is this something I want to do? Is this something that's sort of aligned with I hate to say soul, but yeah, like something that's aligned with your soul. It's sort of a North Star, I guess, like doing it for yourself. So if it's meant to be, I think it kind of just works its way out. But yeah, it's not easy, but if you want to do it enough, you can certainly do it. Like there's more than enough opportunity to make a living off of it, right? It's always a matter of how hard you're willing to work, just like everything else. It's about finding that audience, finding your voice, and finding that audience. And if you keep your own interests and your own, just your own values at the forefront, it'll just happen. Like I know that's such a like foo-foo answer, but like it really is true, because the nature of being an artist is just all about expression and finding more efficient ways of expressing yourself. and then the rest sort of comes. So, but if you have any more if anyone has any more, I don't know, specific questions about that or NFTs in particular, like I said, my DMs are open if anyone wants to ask me anything. So
link in the description.
Yeah.
That's funny that you say that, dude, because a lot of people they overcomplicate things, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, taking away from what you just said, I think that the hardest thing is to understand how simple it is, and it's just perseverance. Mm-hmm. And you only quit, or you only fail when you quit, you know?
Yes.
And as long as you're able to persevere and push through those moments of adversity and struggle and self-doubt, internal self-worth, imposter syndrome, you know, if you can get through those moments, dude, I think what you're saying is that it's going to happen, it's going to come, you know?
Yeah.
And just keep your eye on the prize, whatever the prize is, whatever that motivation is, whether it's money, fame, cars. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's a good point, though. Another really, I think, something that I've found to be tremendously valuable is the showing up. And that's like, again, you can use an example of me saying good morning every single day for the last 3 years or whatever. It's not as important to know what it is you need to do, but if you show up every day, it happens. Like, that's the most important thing, because it's so easy to not show up when you don't have exactly what you want to do laid out in front of you in exactly the right order, right? Like, when things are confusing, when things are like stressful or unknown, it's so easy to quit and not show up. And one of the best things that I've learned is if you do, some of the best things come from showing up when uncertainty is at its highest, because that, again, it just goes back, like failing fast and failing forward, like you said, like that doesn't happen if you don't show up. And that's a barrier for a lot of people with a lot of things. And so yeah, I guess that's really applicable to anybody, not just artists, but certainly for artists.
Beautifully said, dude.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab a mirror real quick. All right.
Nice.
Look how beautiful he is.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic.
And for the camera. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate you coming on today, talking about a hot topic, talking about something that may be uncomfortable, but putting yourself in a vulnerable situation like this, getting a haircut, and being kind of the voice for the industry right now is I think it's an admirable place for you to be today. So,
well, I mean, again, thank you for the opportunity. It's always a privilege to be in your barber chair. So this is maybe slightly a little bit more uncomfortable than normal, but it's my pleasure. So thanks. I really appreciate it.
Dude, of course, man. Yeah. Boom. Go check it out.
Great.
Dude, thank
Great
you, bro.
work.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
I'll see you next cut.
I'll see you next cut.
All right, bro. Thank you guys for watching another episode of The Shape Up with Jacob. Obviously, as you can see, that being an artist sometimes is tricky, but powering through those failures and pushing forward through the things that you feel uncomfortable with is the key. And that's kind of the message that I want to send to you guys watching. Links are all in the description to find Daniel here at The Shape Up with Jacob and all of his handles for social media. And if you're interested in buying one of his NFTs, I'm sure he would appreciate it. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next episode. Peace.